desktop as a service, also called DaaS. Remote work has accelerated the need for hybrid cloud models to facilitate working from home via your desktop as a service approach, to provide you securely access to your virtual apps and to your desktop from the cloud to any device or any location. Joe's Augustin. He's a senior product manager for virtual apps and desktop service at Citrix. And Shane Kleinert. He's a senior solution architect at Choice Solutions. They're here to discuss all things DaaS. Welcome, Joes and Shane.
Thank you.
Welcome. Yeah, thanks for having us.
You're welcome. Joes, remote work increased the demand to work securely via desktop as a service. Can you share some of the key considerations that organizations make when they're moving to DaaS?
Sure. So at the preface, I would like to say that DaaS as a use case has just taken off in the last few months. I have worked with numerous customers who have started consuming DaaS either as part of their strategic objectives or just because of what 2020 has done to them. DaaS has allowed customers to go from 0 to 100 without the complexity of hardware procurement or the hardware setup phase for data centers, etc. So from my vantage point, there are a couple of key considerations that I think a customer should be mindful of. The first and foremost and most important is not to give up on flexibility. Cloud wars are far from over. In fact, with the pandemic, a lot of engineering investment has been channeled towards more innovation on the public clouds. So you as a customer want to be in a position where you can take advantage and leverage all the goodness that all these public cloud providers are bringing out. And the moment you're logged in with a specific cloud provider, then you have taken off those chances. Also, the next point is to think long-term and to embrace feature depth. Simplicity is great and definitely a must-have for day one operations. But also think about your deployment 6 to 12 months out, where more advanced features like multiple load balancing mechanisms or intelligent power management operations, etc., become more important. In the longer term, these advanced features can help control the cost and also the end user experience. One last consideration I would say is about the ease of image management. With the constantly evolving security landscape, admins will be required to push frequent updates to the golden images and roll them out to the that landscape. Ease of managing the golden images, rolling out those updates can significantly help with the management overheads, especially when you're scaling operations in the long term.
And Shane, you work daily with clients and support them with the implementations. Can you share your experience? So what kind of practical requirements your clients ask you to support their remote working?
Yeah, for sure. The first thing I always start with is, everyone's excited to move to a DaaS model. I say, let's take a step back and understand the business requirements, understand why we're moving to the DaaS model, kind of think about our applications that we have, our business requirements, our availability requirements are key. Just because it's in the cloud, it's just someone else's data center, right? It doesn't mean that it's going to be 100% uptime. I mean, GCP just the other day had an outage. Microsoft has outages. Amazon has outages. So you have to plan and architect for failure. So that's something that you have to take time to consider. It's a mindset shift. Things are done differently. Everything in the cloud costs. There's a cost to everything. So you have to really shift and understand, the way you're doing things today. Don't just do a traditional lift and shift. Take the time to understand both your business, your application, your data requirements to make sure you have the best possible experience for users.
And you work with so many different clients. Can you give an example of an implementation best practice and especially what the key reasons are for successful implementation?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, it's really exciting use case, and it kind of goes right in. It was a perfect fit for a DaaS model. It's a local healthcare company. They're a startup, so they wanted to be born in the cloud as a startup. They needed to be agile. They started with 10 people. And they actually scaled out to over just under 300 people within the year, all during the current climate of the pandemic that we're in. And the use case was specifically, Citrix virtual apps and desktops. They wanted to be, born in Azure. It was all built on Azure. So they actually got to deliver for this customer. We got to deliver. They're a medical billing and coding company. So we actually were delivering a Windows 10 multi-session, which is something newer provided by Microsoft. So we got to leverage that technology using the DaaS service. And one of the things that's forgotten when you're kind of building out in these environments is selecting the right licensing model. That's one thing when you're a 365 customer. If you're on the right model, M365, E3, E5, you get to use Windows 10 multi-session, which actually, as part of that license, you're incurring that cost. You're already paying for the cost of the Windows 10 desktop. So they got to leverage with the flexibility of the Citrix DaaS service. They got to leverage for the offshore users. They got to and the back-end ops folks. They got to leverage Windows 10 multi-session, which was great. And Citrix, as part of that, the provisioning process that Joe's talked about, it enabled them to automatically check the box, which is something it's super easy to forget if you're just manually going through that provisioning method, which enables it's basically like Linux pricing. So you're automatically saving on the compute perspective. So as part of that scalability, as they were scaling up, they had to be agile, as I had mentioned. So using the CVAD service, they were able to easily scale the environment. The admin there, really sharp guy, but he had to focus on a lot of things, right? Had to wear multiple hats at a startup. So it was nice to have kind of the simplicity of the Citrix DaaS service, where he didn't have to worry about the on-prem infrastructure from a Citrix perspective. So all that was basically in Azure as part of kind of that platform as a service from Citrix. So they used the gateway service and Citrix Workspace, and they actually got to go completely modern, which is what they want to do from the beginning, and use Azure Active Directory for conditional access, Citrix federated authentication. So it was really a really great use case, for the DaaS model for this customer.
And I think you hit the nail on the head with being agile. Joes, if you look to these companies that needs to be more agile, they have to combine working from the office, working from home. Can you share some concrete steps that they can take to make the DaaS model work very well?
Sure. I think so. Most enterprises that I've worked with already have some sort of VDI presence. So they have some on-prem data centers, or they already have a VDI infrastructure in place. So for these customers, I think the easiest way to start using DaaS is by leveraging additional capacity on the public clouds to complement what they already have. So you don't want to waste your investment. You already have a set investment on your data centers. You want to use your public cloud capacity as a way to complement that. So you need to take care that whatever brokering mechanism you're using is advanced enough to allow for such mechanisms so that you can have complete saturation of your on-prem data centers. That is, your fixed cost is already done, and then reach into the cloud for those additional workloads. So this can then tie into other forcing events. Like I've seen customers think about their data center hardware refresh cycle and use that as an opportunity to move some or all of their capacity to the cloud. So the hardware data center refresh is a hard requirement that comes in every couple of years. So that's another forcing function that can be used to think about it. Whatever said and done, I think I would highly recommend customers to bring all these considerations together based on their business imperatives, and to essentially create a deployment roadmap, which can then sequentially deliver value to the business with incremental technology changes, not a big bang, but slow changes which can incrementally get them to the destination.
And one question, I think, which is applicable for both of you, but we didn't address it yet. I truly believe that customer experience and user experience is the main driver for using any type of application. Maybe Shane, you can share as your opinion about how a DaaS model impacts the user and the client experience.
Sure. Yeah, it's something I've been saying for a long time. I mean, end user experience, when you're talking about end user computing, is completely is one of the probably the most important things you have to consider, because at the end of the day, you're typically taking them from a traditional model of where they're working on physical PCs, and you're bringing them into this kind of virtual world. And if it's not the same experience or better, it's doomed to fail. So it's important to have the user doesn't care about this grandioso DaaS model that you have, right? They care about flexibility. They care about user experience. They care about having an efficient experience and being able to connect from anywhere. And that's something that's possible through the DaaS model. And going back to that use case that we talked about, that customer had users connecting from India. A lot of contractors that were connecting. It allowed them to connect not just with the Windows 10 multi-session, but also the typical, shared hosted apps model. So they used Server 2019 for that. So it gave them great flexibility, but using the protocol, the Citrix protocol, which has been kind of the de facto standard for years for Citrix, and just had some tremendous enhancements over the last, few years. They got to really see just great performance for the folks that are connecting over India as they were scaling up their medical coding department. So that's something that that's definitely important. And just one more point to make there is understand your baseline when you're going to a DaaS model. Really, it's in any project, right? Understand where you're coming from. So use the right tooling to understand what your user experience baseline is, and then compare that to when you're actually moving to the DaaS model, and make sure that they have a pristine or better experience than what they had prior.
And Joes, what's your opinion about this? How does the DaaS model impact the user experience?
I'll add to what Shane said. I agree. First of all, I agree with whatever he said. And I think one of the things that you need as a customer to keep in mind is that the protocol really matters. He talked about HTX protocol, which is optimized for end user experience. We have been on a mission to constantly improve the end user experience through improved graphics, device support, etc. But one thing that the HTX really does well is that it also optimizes the network traffic. So it allows you to minimize on your traffic consumption itself, your network traffic, both your egress and your ingress, while also delivering exceptional end user experience. So from a customer perspective, you're getting that end user experience without, while also being able to manage the overall cost of the solution.
Great. I think nice summary and great for sharing your experience, Jose and Shane. Thanks a lot for being in the show again. And for the audience, thank you for watching, and we see you next time.